Welcome back to DotLife. We are talking today about a really important topic, which is the importance of artist spaces in cities like Boston and Dorchester. This is something that I think is really dear to me just with the work that I've been doing at Dorchfest and understanding musicians and the type of work that they put into their craft and where they need a little bit more space to be able to do that and execute at a high level. And we're also talking about visual artists. So I'm excited to invite two guests, Bobby Boyd, who is the executive director of the record company, which is also, thank you, one of our great sponsors here at DotLife.
Thank you.
Bobby, thanks for having us. Or thanks for coming.
Vice versa.
Thanks for having us and thanks for coming.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. I got you. No worries.
And then also Cat Armistead, who is the lead organizer of the Dorchester Open Studios event, which is starting in a couple of weeks in June.
Yes, yeah, super happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. So we've got two different perspectives on two very similar things. I'm going to have you both kind of introduce yourselves and your organizations a little bit, and then we're going to dive into the importance of artist space. So Cat, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm a jeweler, metalsmith, sculptor, and painter. I do a lot of different stuff. And I got involved with Humphreys Street Studios in around 2019. And kind of there's a big story there we can go into around saving the property and preventing artist displacement. But after that, we wanted to establish better connections with other visual artists in Dorchester who have access to different spaces or don't have access to spaces. So a lot of the work I do as part of Open Studios and outside of that is to help create more opportunities for visual artists in Dorchester to connect with one another.
Awesome. And you live in JP, correct?
I live in JP, yes.
Okay, that's okay. That's allowed.
You
Love
can kick
JP.
me out.
I'm a former JP myself, so I'm okay with that. Bobby, how about
I'm going to try to make mine as brief.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I can't. So Bobby Boyd, executive director of the Record Co. We operate out of two locations, one at 960 Mass Ave, which is our flagship location, which has 20 rooms of bookable recording, rehearsal, and practice space. And then we have this building, which we're in now, which was part of a crisis intervention with the Sound Museum closing, that we took over late 2022, 2023. And it had 40 rooms. We put another 50 rooms in it. So we have 90 rooms now of monthly rehearsal space here.
That's a lot of rooms.
Yeah, a lot of work. With about 400 bands, creatives working out of this space now. So between both locations, we serve about 4,000 artists and
That's
creatives
crazy.
a month. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow. Yeah. And this building before was WB Studios, is that right?
It was the old Beasley Media Group
Beasley
building.
Media Group,
A bunch of radio stations here. I'm sure they had a bunch of staff here. We just tried to convert as many rooms as we could. We actually tore down walls and just built rooms.
Wow.
As many rooms as we could because we were just trying to fill the void for all those artists being displaced. There's over 1,000 musicians in the Sound Museum. Not all of them came over.
That was in Alston?
In Alston,
okay.
yeah. And so about 30 to 40% came
Okay.
over. But when we got here, we figured out really quickly that there was also a space need in Dorchester that we had no idea that we were solving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk about what happens. We'll start with you, Bobby. What happens in these spaces? What kind of artists do you have in here?
Mm-hmm.
What do they do here?
Yeah, there's just, I think that's a really great question because a lot of people don't know what an artist building is.
Yeah.
So when it comes across their timeline and they're like, hey, an artist building is closing, there's not a lot of awareness about what actually
What
is
that
in it.
actually means.
Yeah, so in these spaces, you just have a creative hub, especially in this space. We have recording studios. We have bands from all different genres that you can think of. We have independent artists. I have one of our favorite friends, Jackson, who's a bagpipe player, just because he can't play.
I've heard him before.
Just because he can't play at home. He's like, I can rent a space here and my wife won't kill me. But we have fashion designers, painters. We have, artists. We have a print shop on the first floor with Patrick.
My logo.
There you go.
Thank you, Patrick, was designed by that space.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of creatives, and I think it's an opportunity for these creatives, one, to obviously express their creativity, but two, then to try out business opportunities, right? So like someone like Patrick probably could take the opportunity to go find retail space on his own, but this is a lot more affordable and it gives him the flexibility to try more things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the same case with some of the recording studios and some of the bands here. It's like you get to try and experiment and test things out when you have that kind of flexibility, but also when you can make as much noise as humanly possible. So there's a mixed bag here as far as creativity. or creatives in the building, but I think there's a big part of the creative economy here, and you see that with like Ugly Duck Studios that has several employees. And, you know, there's businesses in this building that actually has employees and staff. So I think when we're talking about the creative economy, you can't look away from these kinds of buildings and say that you don't care about them if you care about the creative economy and how that is actually moving in the city.
Yeah, and Kat, talk about the same kind of situation over at Humphreys Street, but from more of a visual arts perspective.
Yeah, I love what you said about the creative economy and kind of how we value that and sort of like how we invest in creativity. It makes me think about how we invest in creativity in communities and value that, like not just monetarily, but also in terms of like the cultural value. So yeah, at Humphreys Street, we've got over 40 artists, ranging from fabricators who create, you know, like a lot of furniture for different restaurants in the city, other huge projects. We have paper makers, we have fashion designers as well, painters, ceramicists, and there's a lot even beyond that. We have one of, if not the only, non-school associated blacksmith shop, like fully functional. There's a power hammer in there, and it's also like you're saying, it's a space for community. So it's a catalyst to create these creative connections, to push one another creatively, and kind of like grow our opportunities together and collaborate. And I think that sort of strengthens us overall, but also individually as artists, just knowing people where you can ask, what are the grants that are coming out? Kind of, what do you have coming up? Do you need support? And there's a lot of really cool sort of collaboration where a friend of mine who's a stone carver is having our steel worker Jillian fabricate eyebrows for the face. This is Westy, for the face that he's making for a show. So yeah, we've got a lot of different people. I want to call out JPix is someone who inspires me a lot. They're a photographer, an Upham's Corner native, and a lot of their work has to do with Dorchester and kind of like the families, the spaces, the communities there. And yeah, the Creative Studio is another pretty big fabrication shop where they're doing a ton of screen printing. They work a lot with Boston Public Schools and other clients and just do a lot of really, really cool graphic work there too.
I think, you know, you both kind of touched on that community collaboration piece. Being a creative and being an artist is more than just being, although I'm sure there are moments, I have to preface this and say I'm not a creative or an artist, so I'm basically taking this from my boyfriend who is and from people I know, but you definitely create on your own, but then coming together and being inspired by each other and having those collaborative encounters has got to be useful. I think you mentioned, Kat, that there was someone who left to give their space to someone else and then kind of regretted it, right? Because they weren't getting that collaborative experience. Yeah.
So that was Christina Tedesco, who's amazing, who's part of Art Stays Here, which is working to prevent artist displacement in the city of Boston. And she, I think, made the right call because she wasn't able to get to the studio as often, and she wanted it to go to somebody that really needed it. But since then, you know, we miss her, and I think she also kind of misses being around that. It's something,
the energy, right?
Yeah, exactly. For me, I got out of college and I had no critiques and like no kind of space to get feedback on my work and to until I found a Craigslist ad for my studio at Humphreys Street. And since then, it's just really become, I've seen my work kind of improve, and I've seen people around me really grow in the building from having access to one another, which is really cool. Yeah.
Bobby, when you and I first met, I was lucky enough to take a tour of this building, not all 90 studios, but several of them. And I was blown away by how much equipment and how many things are here and how difficult that must be when you are displaced from a place like the Sound Museum. Talk about how they're using these spaces.
Yeah, it goes back to just, I think the artists are making such a significant commitment to these spaces, but they're also like beautifying the area they're around. But when you're talking about what goes into these rooms, it's amazing. I mean, you see, this is a temporary solution. We were only supposed to be here for a couple of years, unfortunately. Fortunately,
we'll talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, we're going to be here a little bit longer, but I say that just to point out the fact that the amount of commitment that they're putting into these rooms, you wouldn't think that this was a temporary solution. Like there's a serious recording studio just down the hall that's decked out.
Yeah.
And there's some of these rooms where you look at the investment that these folks are making into their creative careers. You would say, wow, they really believe in this thing. One of the issues that I have is when we constantly have this disruption where we uproot them and they find another space and they uproot them and they find another space, I think you do the exact opposite. You start to create the doubt. You start to create that lack of confidence. You start to create mental health issues.
Demoralizing,
right.
Yeah.
So then you start to wonder, is this thing even worth it?
Yeah.
And can I continue to do this? And then I think that's when you start to see folks start leaving the city, right? And I was just talking to Jim Lucchese, who was the president of Berkeley, about the fact that they're graduating amazing students, but there's actually not economy here.
Yeah.
Right? So like these folks are getting these amazing degrees, but like where is the culture? Where is the music spaces? Where are the venues?
Right.
Where's the creative economy for them to jump in? We're doing our job, or at least our part,
Right.
to try to slow it down as much as possible, but it's not enough. So I think the commitment that these folks are making in the room, I've been blown away. I'm like, it's unreal when you walk and tour some of these spaces. And that's why I think open studios are important.
Yeah.
Because when folks actually get to come out and see a space like this, you get to see the commitment. And then when it comes across your timeline that an artist building is closing, maybe you might have some attachment because you know someone who's a creative, or you know someone's a drummer or whatever, and you can say, I don't want to see that close. So then you start to join that advocacy.
I mean, literally, where will they go if they can't be, like, you can't just pick this up and take it to a storefront, which
Right.
A, is not affordable.
Right.
B, there's not 90 of them sitting around waiting for people
Right.
to take over. And it's not as though they can just create a space in their home. There's really not a place for people to go if these types of buildings close down.
Yeah, it's not. And it's not unique to just Boston. I know we're talking
Right.
about, the state of Massachusetts and Boston. It's not unique to just Boston.
Yeah.
I mean, the average musician makes less than $51,000
Yeah.
annually.
Right.
And the average rent cost is over three grand.
That's
right?
crazy.
But the creative economy produces almost 27 billion, right? But we can't carve out any space
Right.
with that amount of money to say, hey, let's preserve some of these artist spaces around the city. Let's make sure that our cities don't become gray walls.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, not to mention what you're losing,
Yeah.
not just monetarily,
Right.
but the enhancement, enrichment in our lives with these
Right.
things. Yeah.
So,
So we talked a little bit about what will happen if these places close, but I think it's even more like the loss of livelihood. You talked about demoralization, but have you seen people just stop creating?
I've seen a ton of people. I'm sure you've seen them as well, but there's a ton of people that just, the displacement is too much.
Yeah.
But also the lack of respect that you start to feel as a creative in the city, right? The Boston music scene used to be something that people admired back in the days when it was a little more connected than it is now.
Yeah.
But now it just seems like it's an afterthought, right? Like we can close all of these venues because we want to put up biotech or, want to have
Luxury
all these,
apartments.
right?
Yeah.
Or we can have all these colleges not paying taxes and they buy up all the real estate in the best locations.
Yeah.
And, they can have at it and keep charging whatever they want to charge. So it's just like, okay, so when do we stop and look and say, okay, we're creating a problem that's going to lead to mental health issues and other issues if we don't stop? Because we've already taken music out of the schools,
Yeah.
right? And it's already having a negative impact on our children.
Right.
So we're starting to see how that is actually affecting adults. They're talking about music therapy and how helpful it is for people. So there's a lot of opportunity to create work for folks.
Yeah.
But we're not really focusing on the solution. We're just like, well, we can create one event, or we can bring them downtown for a little bit, or we can do this, and it'll keep them quiet long enough, and maybe that'll go away.
Yeah.
So they're always looking to sweep it under the rug. So
Well,
to
and
speak.
it's a shame because we do have that pipeline in Boston of Berkeley and of Mass College of Art and Design, where we get some of the premier artists in the country, if
Yeah.
not the world, who come out of those places, and then we lose them. I've had
Right.
so many Dorchfest artists move, and I can't book them again because once they're done at Berkeley, they're gone.
And when they leave, they don't claim
They're
Boston
not
anymore.
coming back. Yeah.
They're like, oh, we're not from Boston. Like, some really cool artists that are from here. Just it's really unfortunate because my niece is in a band, Mint Green,
Okay.
and she just went on the West Coast, and I'm like, geez.
I was gonna say we got to get her in here, but yeah.
And did the normal routine, Boston Calling, did all
Yeah.
the shows, did all the gigs, but again, just the opportunity
Yeah.
not here.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is that everyone says they care about the arts until it's time to care about the arts.
Well, that's the thing too, and that's part of the reason, not to go on a Dorchfest tangent, but part of the reason, part of the mission that we started the event with was it was coming out of COVID, and we wanted to make sure that artists were being paid for their work because they were really struggling at the time. But the sentiment that many people have of, well, we're giving them exposure, you know, that should be enough. That is, no one eats with exposure.
No.
You know, we really need to value and pay and
that's the thing as well, is that I think that it's really insensitive for venues and business institutions to think that you can just bring a band.
Yeah.
You know what bringing a band does for a bar or
Right.
to any venue? It lights that place up.
Yep.
So you want to pay this group that had to load up all of their gear into an Uber.
Yep.
They had to get to the venue, unload the gear, set the gear up, you know, play this amazing performance, tear down the gear, load them back in the
Yeah.
Uber, and you want to pay them a couple
And they're like,
$100
well,
bucks.
it's only an hour. It's like
Yeah.
6 hours of their
No,
time.
it is.
Yeah.
And that couple $100 just got wasted on the Uber. Right. So
Right.
what did they really make?
Yeah.
And they're doing it for their own exposure. Maybe I gain a new fan, you know, maybe I sell a piece of merch. So, you know,
Yeah.
But that's not always the case. I think artists' pay has to be at the forefront too. And we have to pay them fairly.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Kat, you mentioned a couple of folks who are in the Humphreys Street Studio space. Are there any other artists that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, I wanted to highlight Franklin, who's been kind of my longest collaborator at Humphreys Street. We've done a few kind of emerging artist shows, one of which happened at the local hand last year, and that one was great. We were able to get a grant, so we were able to give all the participating artists a stipend. And I think it's always, I love this conversation, and I'm thinking, like, in the back of my head, I'm thinking about my budget for open studios. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, am I paying people enough? Right? Like,
No,
it's good.
we're not, and I'm not either. And I don't ever want artists to think that we think that's enough, but at least
Yeah.
it's something to get them, you know, some
Right.
compensation.
Right.
Recognition.
And it's
Yeah.
good, like, building it for next year and holding each other accountable in that
Yeah.
way is awesome. But yeah, so we paid those artists a stipend of $50 each. A lot of shows you apply for as a visual artist, you have to pay to apply.
Yeah.
Sometimes up to like $45. And then most times you get rejections back, right? And so talking about mental health and talking about how do you sustain your practice when you're kind of getting told no, the finances aren't adding up, it's really challenging.
Yeah.
So part of the work Franklin and I try and do together is to, just create spaces for especially newer artists to show their work. And he's a painter and a designer. He does this crazy stuff where he like fully wraps big vans sometimes. So sometimes
cool.
there'll be like a big van in the studio parking lot and Franklin's there with a blowtorch, wrapping that. So he inspires me a lot. His whole saying is more love is okay. And so he's all about kind of spreading positivity in a very real way. And I mentioned Jay. Jillian is a really cool steel artist who does a lot of public art pieces. She just had a commission in Portland to do a big piece in one of their main squares. And I just admire how sharp all of her work is. She's got a really strong visual language. And I just love, like, as a metal worker, I love women who work in steel. I just think it's awesome and we need more of it. I think those are kind of most of my shout outs.
Awesome. How about you, Bobby?
Oh, man, there's too many.
Just a few of the 90. Or you said actually 400,
Well,
right?
I said Jackson. He's
Yeah.
one of my favorites. Ray Liriano. I'll give Carlos, who manages the building, a shout out. He's an amazing.
Carlos is great.
Yeah, he makes lo-fi beat tapes and does an open aux. Check it out.
I didn't know he was a
cool.
performer as well.
Yeah,
see,
so-
he's been complimenting the people I've had in, and he's just sneaky not even telling me that he's
so he
the
does
guy.
he does this thing called Numb Summer where he brings a bunch of producers out and just kind of like really has like a producer community where they showcase their beats and tracks and things like that. So I sure he has a new one coming up. So Numb Summer. I love the folks over at Ugly Duck, and I love a gentleman, Wacko, who's in the corner. He's also an engineer, a producer. There's just so many amazing people in the building, and I'm sure I'm going to miss some, and folks might call me out. But there's a lot of amazing folks in the building, but also at 960. I mean, we have one of my favorite artists is Neem. She's a Palestinian hip-hop artist. I think she's really doing creative visuals, but also she's just an amazing talent. And there's just a ton of bands like that we see on a daily basis. And my biggest thing is I just want to see them all win.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that I think that that can happen, and I think you were touching on it a bit, is just that, make more love.
More love is okay.
More love
Yeah.
is okay. I think that that also speaks to the community, that I think artists have to take some responsibility for the community we build too. We're always talking about folks like either, the Record Co. or Humphreys or whatever, the effort that they're putting forward. I think the artists have to put some effort forward too. And what I mean by that is when places like Great White or others open or close, we have to make sure that we're not just going there when our shows are coming up, right? So we have to, we can't be kind of selfish about that and say, well, I'm only going because my friends are performing. We have to make sure that we're going to these events and making them popular as well, so that they stick around.
Yeah.
They really rely on that, and we can't be upset if they go away if we only show up when our friends are playing.
There is definitely a lack of venue space in Boston, Greater Boston. There used to, when I first moved here 10 years ago, I think there were more venues open that people could go perform at, and that's part of the reason I started the Tiny Dot series, is just really to highlight. There's no lack of artists who want to be highlighted. It's just finding the places. One thing that really kind of bothers me is that both in Buffalo and Rochester, New York, there's concerts on the park. There's different outdoor venues that showcase smaller artists, local artists, or even traveling places like Rusted Root was always a constant because of, I don't know, they just came to Rochester a lot. I don't see that here. We don't have a small stage on the Malibu Beach or something where people can come play, and I think we should. It's
a permit. It's zoning and permitting, and they make it hard for artists to do those kind of things. And let me not get into a political firestorm there, but I think we can make this city a little bit more easy for artists.
Yeah.
We have the space out back. We want to amplify it, but I think also. And that goes back to me just trying to figure out what artists are doing, create a directory, find out what everyone's doing. We have space, we have venues, we need people to amplify those spaces.
Yeah.
We would love to work with artists. But I think also working with the communities and finding out what do they want. Maybe there's a certain genre of music that they would love to have played in particular holiday or whatever might be coming up, and those are networks that we can build and say, hey, we have this group of bands, we're trying to put on a thing here. Is that something we can do? And getting the community involved from a perspective that they can start advocating for wanting that in those spaces. Because I'm sure the community would love to see Deutsche Fest and stuff more people would love to. I always enjoy myself when I go and just scoot around the town. Usually dragging my daughter out, but it's usually a blast, seeing all the bands. And there's usually most of the bands that are
play
at the
here.
Record Co. So,
Awesome.
Kat, you are organizing an event that does exactly that. It kind of showcases the artists that you have in your facility. Can you talk about Open Studios?
Yeah. It's funny because I was just trying to get all that permit stuff squared away today. I was like, ooh. I don't want to go into it too much, but it is hard.
We'll have that session offline, the three of us.
we don't want to get in trouble.
It is hard to throw events in Boston. I see it a lot. My partner's a DJ. He's one of the people who's going to be playing on Saturday at our Open Studios, and a lot of them are looking for venues to throw events at, and it's really hard to make the financials add up with the venue cost. One venue in particular that we like a lot for space reasons charges even the hour that you're setting up, and it's just kind of how are artists supposed to make a living doing this kind of stuff? It's tricky to make it work. But on the positive side, so we're for Open Studios, we've got a few things going on. We've been encouraging a lot of people to host demos and workshops so people can really get a sense for the process and not just the final product. I think that's really important because it's not a linear process, and it's a lot of people I talk to about art are like, oh, I could never do that. And I think everyone really has creativity, and so the more
I don't think I do.
I bet you do, though.
Isn't this creativity?
Yeah, that's
Definitely.
true. That's true.
Undoubtedly.
What's the date and time for Open Studios?
Great question. It's June 7th and 8th, and it's going to be from 12 to 5 p.m.
Nice.
We'll have a collaborative mural painting project where anyone can come and help paint a mural. Shout out to Phoebes and Ananda for that. And we're going to have passport activity for kids that I stole from DSNI's Multicultural Fest last year, where you give stamps to like a few different people in the building, and the kids get a sheet of paper and they try and get all the stamps. And we'll also have cornhole and like dancing. We'll have Fresh Food Generations food truck on Saturday.
And
then
they might have cocktail license by then. I don't know. I know they're
that would
working
be
on
fun.
it. Yeah.
But I think there's a permit I didn't apply for.
Oh,
that I
yeah.
would need to apply
yeah.
for that.
This is Boston. I forgot. Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
you
we're
will be
excited.
shutting down Humphrey Street for...
So we actually pivoted a little bit. We're shutting down Humphrey Street would kind of cause like a bunch of different little neighborhoods, a big traffic jam. So what we're going to do is we're going to shut down Elder Street, which is sort of like perpendicular to Humphreys, but still right in front of where our building is. So it was a good kind of a good feedback we got from the city in the permitting process, and something we feel good about. And, you know, talking about like the local community and the neighbors, I totally agree with what y'all were saying earlier. We were out giving letters to the people who live on Elder Street saying, hi, we're going to close your street in a couple weeks, but here's all the fun things that we want you to come and participate in. And I think something I want to be better about doing this year in particular is hosting after the event like a feedback session where they can talk about what they liked about it, things they want to improve, things they wanted to see.
Yeah.
So it can become the kind of thing that people who don't have a super strong connection to Humphrey Street necessarily are still like looking forward to and excited about every year, hopefully.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
really smart.
Bobby, you've done similar events in this location and I think in your Mass Ave location, right,
Yep.
where you just have people come in, you've got drinks, and people are set up in
Yeah.
their studios. No drinks, water.
No, definitely, and it's always great to just have people out. You know, most recently we had a evening of gratitude at our location at 960. We turned the whole place into kind of an interactive night where you could go walk through. One studio was a live podcast where we had Amy Bennett from Art Stays Here.
Oh, I love her.
And then we had a couple rooms where folks could go in and pick up instruments and play with bands.
Oh, that's cool.
And then there was one room that was doing karaoke, and that was Ray Liriano, and his room was overpacked. I mean, like everyone loved to be in his room, and it was just this. He has an amazing band. If anyone
He
hasn't
does.
heard,
If you missed Ray's karaoke night, he'll
Oh
be
my
at
God.
Dorchfest, 30 Beaumont, 1 o'clock.
he's
Nice.
worth seeing. He's
Yeah,
worth
he's
it.
great.
His energy, the band is amazing. And then we had Leo Blanco and the Latonius Monk, which was our live main performance at Studio A, and it was
That's an
amazing.
awesome name. I love that.
But he did like this Latin version of the Latonius Monk.
Yeah.
The Thelonious Monk. Sorry.
Thelonious, yeah.
And it was like unreal. I mean, he was inside the piano pulling things and
What?
playing with. He was manipulating the piano in a way that I've never seen in my life, which was really, really cool. But to your point, we have these amazing events there. We like to get the community involved. We want to do more. And then even here at 55, like I said, we have a space out back. It's a fenced-in area that can hold easily
Yeah.
1,000 people. Right now, trying to raise some money for a stage, but we would love to be a community stage where anyone from Humphreys or anyone from anyone, and they just think about it at an event and say, "Hey, let's put it on the calendar, and it's yours."
Yeah.
We're
I
not-
think we need that. I think that's a really
Yeah.
cool idea.
And for us, I think, you know, when you're talking about cost and people charging you for setup, like that's the stuff that we're trying to get away from. Like we're not even thinking of it from a situation like how much money can we make on it. We just want to amplify it.
Yeah.
We just want to get as many people excited about the arts in this building, or not just in this building, but in this city, as possible, so that it can create an advocacy moment for all of the work that we're doing. So when they see, again, an artist space being deprioritized on their timeline, they can say,
Yeah.
I know what that's about. I know why I care about that.
Right.
I know I've been to one.
What
and-
that brings to my life
Right.
and to my community.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
Kat, talk about your experience or the experience of the folks at Humphrey Street in saving that space and how you were able to convert it to what it is today.
Yeah, that is like a long topic. So let me know if I'm going too long on it. But
We talked about it last night, too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So essentially I joined Humphreys Street sort of later than a lot of my co-tenants. And in 2019, it was a space I came to mostly nights and weekends. It was really quiet. And I didn't know many people there. And through, from 2001 until very recently, like 2021. Amy will be mad if I get my dates wrong, so I'm going to do my best to remember. The studio was owned by this kind of visionary artist duo, Neil Wedette and Joe Wheelwright. And Joe Wheelwright has several pieces in Dorchester, like public artworks, mostly in stone, I think. And they wanted to kind of leave a legacy. Like they found this property. It was a dry cleaning facility and it was unused, and they saw kind of what it could be. So they led kind of that vision, and then they unfortunately both passed away, and the other owners were tired of this old building that was falling apart and all these artist tenants. It's a lot to manage. And so they were interested in selling. And as the tenants, we found out about this, I think when it was pretty close to a sale going through. So, from 2020 to like 2021, we had 2 sales very nearly go through. Like we got
Not with the
notices.
intention of keeping artist space.
No, I mean they developers, like they won't say that they're gonna definitely tear it down, but the listing price was $3 million, and the property has a great view of the city line, and it's kind of like you can put 2 and 2 together on that. But we organized with and I think hope came and went at different parts of the process.
Yeah.
And I say it was largely Christina, who I mentioned, Franklin, and Amy, who really led the charge on that in so many ways. And I think what I learned a lot from them in that process was just how important going down several different avenues is. We were able to work with a lot of different news outlets like WBUR and the Boston Globe to get publicity on it. We started talking with the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture very early on in the process. And we did, some like guerrilla activism with exhibitions that we held, where it was the banners that they bring to a lot of the Arts Days Here events were part of a Fort Point show, talking about displacement. And I think it's looking at all the tools that you have in your tool set and trying to be creative about how to use them. And frankly, we were also really, really lucky. Part of the big reason why neither of those 2 sales went through, in addition to the advocacy and the letters of support and kind of all of that type of work, is that there is a tank of chemicals buried under the ground of Humphrey Street. And it's from when it was a dry cleaning facility.
Okay.
And it's the groundwater, like you don't want to grow vegetables on the property and eat them. And so these potential buyers are looking at a property that they'd have to tear down, build something new. But not only that, they'd have to also dig this tank of chemicals out, do environmental remediation, and deal with all these artists that don't want to be displaced.
Chemicals.
Yeah, so
Saving the day.
yes,
Bobby,
yes.
are there chemicals here?
Might have to go find some.
Let's bury some real quick.
Yeah. But I think what I learned a lot at the start of that process was we had a big Zoom meeting with all of the tenants, and people were like, oh, maybe we should be doing community work. And it's like, you never want to be caught unawares like that, right? Like this conversation is really useful for that too, I think. But it's part of why I've tried to work on the Open Studios projects and on the exhibitions projects, because I think the community work is equally, if not more important than like me sitting in my studio doing something. It's how we sustain ourselves long term. And to your point, it's how people have like a frame of reference of what an artist space does, what the power of an artist space is, and how it can impact them as an individual.
And I know you're trying to have those conversations right now, Bobby. You're a little earlier in the process, obviously trying to kind of mimic what they were able to do at Humphreys Street. You want to talk about where you are?
Yeah,
what
we had our first town hall for the building. Last night was a really good turnout. We had
that's good.
Amy Bennett, had some folks from Atlantic Development.
New Atlantic,
New
they're
Atlantic,
great. Yeah.
And then STA Design, we had some other developers that were there, which was shocking because I didn't think these folks are going to come out, but there's some really good. Not all developers are bad developers.
That's true. Right.
So I don't want to paint with a broad brush. I think
Yep.
there's some really great people that are really trying to slow this thing down. And I think, before I get to town hall, there's just buildings that we've built with biotech firms that are empty right now. So like we're rushing to create all this industry for biotech, but the buildings aren't full.
Yeah.
So there's another issue. Maybe they're doing too much. But our town hall was last night. We had a great turnout. We're just really trying to get in front of having the conversation about
Well,
creating.
just to back you up a
Yeah.
little bit. So, what is the situation here? You mentioned
Yeah.
that your 2 years is
Yeah.
this is temporary, but you're hoping to prevent that. So, just give
Yeah.
us a sense of where you are.
Well, so it started as a 2-year project. We were supposed to be here for 2 years. We're supposed to be out in January 2025. By that time, 290 North Beacon Street over in Alston was supposed to be a thing.
It's not.
It's
started
not.
yet, right?
It's not started. It's still in idea phase. I
Yeah.
think they're taking RFPs for developers now. But
that will stay artist space, or is that still not?
yeah, it's
even-
going to be
okay.
it's going to be mixed use. It's going to be artists and housing.
Housing. Okay.
So
Artist housing, or yeah. Okay.
yeah, developers, some of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that property, we were hoping that by the time our 2 years came up, that we could kind of like hand that over, like you take it now. That didn't happen. So we would not be here for one without the generosity of our property owner,
Yeah.
POP Capital, which was Center Court.
So shout out to them, because
shout out to them, definitely.
they can be not very helpful too sometimes. and-
Yeah, so definitely a shout out to them, and we were able to work with them, get a license extension for 2 more years. So I'm in conversation with POB Capital and the team over there all the time. I'm
Yeah.
like, let's keep me.
Did anybody put an offer in yet?
Keep me in, because we just sold the building next door, the 75,
Yeah.
the WB building right
Yeah.
next to Southline. So they're like, that's supposed to be, 750 units, 2 buildings, supposedly some affordable housing, but you know how that goes.
Yeah.
No one's going to be able to afford a $750,000 condo in the city. But anyways, we got a license extension, and we're just trying to really now plan for, January 2027 and what that might look like. So we're just trying to get the artist community together. We're trying to create some moments of advocacy. We want to have as many events as humanly possible, so that can all lead up. That can be some momentum leading up to January. So hopefully by that time we'll have enough.
So is your goal to keep this a permanent artist location?
I would love that. I don't
Yeah.
think it's possible.
Okay.
I think it's very expensive to keep a building like this in the city. I mean, the footprint and everything that's
Yeah.
here, it would be very costly. But I do think if the city and all these foundations that hold all of this money, like it's theirs, got together and wanted to do something for the artist community, they could do it.
Yeah. I would hate to lose this in Dorchester. I think Dorchester needs it. To your point, there's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
artists here who kind of emerged once they had a space.
I just think it's not heavily prioritized.
No.
And we're in a mayor election year, so who knows? Maybe we
Yeah.
put enough pressure on folks where they finally hear some of the pain points of the artist community. I think it's really important for the artist community to get together
Yeah.
and put a Bill of Rights together and put it on, cars no longer in the mayor's office of arts and culture, but to put that on the desk of whoever's incoming. Instead of them always telling us what we should have, is to tell them what we need.
What we need, yeah. So let's just wrap this conversation with what would you ask of folks? And Bobby, just to add to what you just said, you'd like people to reach out to their electeds, but is there
Yeah.
anything else that would be helpful to you right now?
To me, I'm doing everything I can. And my team at the Record Co., I think I want to partner with folks like, Humphreys. I want to partner with anyone who wants that partnership. I think collaboratively together we can get a lot more done
Yeah.
than working on the silos. I know, like, I'm busy doing all of my work, but our work is so adjacent.
Yeah.
So I ask the community, especially the artist community, to step up and do their part. There's a bunch of amazing organizations out here doing a lot of work,
Yeah.
and no one knows how hard it is to do this work. But it's really rewarding when you can see the artists participate. So if the artist community can participate in whatever that is, if that's sharing a post, if that's showing up to a town hall, if that's going to a community meeting, if that's reaching out to your elected officials, if that's creating a list of resources, whatever you can do, I think that that can go a long way.
And support each other.
Yeah.
And as you said, that really helped with Humphreys Street staying
Yeah.
intact.
Yeah. I mean, many hands make light work. I
Yeah.
totally agree. I did want to chime in on one thing I left out of the Humphrey Street story, which is that we did also get a lot of help from the Mayor's Office of Arts and
Yeah,
Culture. They put forward like $2 million of the $3 million we needed, and then New Atlantic was able to put a proposal together to build affordable housing. Some of it artists prioritized on the back lot, which was just grass previously. So that's kind of like how that all worked out. But I totally agree. I think we need to continue to prioritize saving artist spaces and continue that conversation with the city. As far as it relates to Humphrey Street, you know, I think coming to Open Studios is like the main thing I want people to do.
June 7th and 8th, 12
June
to
7th
5.
and 8th, 12 to 5, yes. And giving us feedback about, you know, how we can be better, how we can have, you know, more connection with the arts community in Dorchester. We moved Dorchester Open Studios to one site just so we can control like the visitor experience for artists, so it feels like a lot of visitors are coming, and because a lot of Dorchester arts organizations have been in a little bit of a state of flux. But in the future, I'd love to do, you know, Dorchester Open Studios with a bunch of sites and talk that through. But I think we need more collaborators to make that happen.
Yeah.
So my door is always open for those conversations too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I have one more question for both of you. Where is your favorite place to go to eat in Dorchester?
Oh man.
Does one of you want to go first?
Oh, that's a tough
Bobby,
one.
you live
It's a
in
tough
Dorchester,
question.
right?
In Dorchester, I'd have to say bread.
Okay.
Lower Mills.
Yeah, all right.
It's consistent. I'm big on consistency.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kat?
I gotta check that place out. I have to say Comfort Kitchen.
Oh,
in
that's a good one.
Upham's
Comfort
Corner.
Kitchen.
They were in JP for a bit. Do
They
you
were,
remember?
yes.
Yeah.
I went there, and yeah, I go there all
Yeah.
the time. It's
Comfort Kitchen is
that's
excellent.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, they also worked with Franklin. Did the posters in the bathroom there.
Okay.
Nora, who's a stone carver at Humphrey Street, did the bench out front, and Jem, who's one of the fabricators, did a lot of their outdoor seating. So they've also like consistently been working with us on projects that they need, which I really appreciate.
And they were part of, and I'm not going to remember the name, the incubator space, which now has new
that
restaurants
Commonwealth
in
Kitchen?
Commonwealth Kitchen. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I really want to have an episode about that whole model because that's also very cool.
Yeah.
So a lot of cool stuff happening in Dorchester, guys. Thanks so
Yeah.
much for coming.
Thank you.
Bobby. Thanks again for being such a great supporter, and
Anytime.
love having you both here. So thanks.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Of
I
course.
really appreciate it. It's been really fun.